Okay, so this is chapter 2 of How to Train Your Dragon, and the chapter is called Inside the Dragon Nursery. You have probably guessed by now that Hiccup was not your natural Viking hero. For a start, he didn't look like a hero. Somebody like Snoutlout, for instance, was tall, muscly, covered in skeleton tattoos, and already had the beginnings of a small moustache. This consisted of a few straggly yellow hairs clinging to his upper lip and was deeply unpleasant to look at, but still impressively manly for a boy of not yet 13. Hiccup was on the small side and had a kind of face that was almost entirely unmemorable. He did have heroic hair, which was a very bright red and stood up vertically however much you tried to wet it down with seawater, but nobody ever saw that because it was hidden under his helmet most of the time. You would never have picked Hiccup out of those 10 boys to be the hero of this story. Snoutlout was good at everything and a natural leader. Dog's Breath was as tall as his father and could do amusing things like farting to the tune of the Burke National Anthem. Hiccup was just absolutely average, the kind of unremarkable, skinny, freckled boy who was easy to overlook in a crowd. So when Gobber blew the horn and moved out of sight to find an uncomfortable rock to sit on and eat his mussel and tomato sandwich, Snoutlout pushed Hiccup out of the way and took charge. "Okay, listen up, boys," he whispered in a menacing fashion. "I'm in charge, not the useless. And anybody who objects is going to get a knuckle sandwich from Dog's Breath and Durbrain." "Ugh," grunted Dog's Breath, pounding his fists together in happy excitement. Dog's Breath was Snoutlout's chief sidekick and a great big gorilla of a boy. "Bash him, Dog's Breath, show him what I mean." Dog's Breath was delighted to oblige. He gave Hiccup a shove that sent him sprawling headfirst into the snow, then ground his face in it. "Pay attention," hissed Snoutlout. The boys dragged their eyes away from Dog's Breath and Hiccup and paid attention. "Rope yourselves together. The best climber should go first." "Well, that's you, of course, Snoutlout," said Fishlegs. "You're the best at everything, aren't you?" Snoutlout looked at Fishlegs suspiciously. It was difficult to tell whether Fishlegs was laughing at him or not, because of his squint. "That's right, Fishlegs," said Snoutlout. "I am." And just in case he had been laughing at him, "Bash him, Dog's Breath." Whilst Dog's Breath pushed Fishlegs down to join Hiccup in the snow, Snoutlout bossily ordered everybody to rope themselves together. Hiccup and Fishlegs were the last to be tied on, just behind a flushed and triumphant Dog's Breath. "Oh, brilliant," muttered Fishlegs. "I'm about to enter a cave full of man-eating reptiles tied up to 8 complete maniacs." "If we get to the cave," said Hiccup nervously, looking up at the sheer black cliff. Hiccup put the lighted torch between his teeth and to leave his hands free, and started climbing after the others. It was a perilous climb. The rocks were slippery with snow and the other boys were thoroughly overexcited, making the ascent far too quickly. At one point, Clueless missed his footing and fell, luckily onto Dog's Breath, who caught him by the back of the trousers and heaved back onto the rock again, before he brought the whole lot of them down. When they finally made it to the mouth of the cave, Hiccup looked down briefly at the sea pounding the rocks away below, and swallowed very hard. "Untie the ropes," ordered Snoutlout, his eyes popping with excitement at the thought of the dangers to come. "Hiccup goes to the cave first because he is the son of the chief," he sneered, "and if any of the dragons are awake, he'll be the first to know about it. Once we're in the cave, it's every man for himself. Only the strong can belong." Although he wasn't your usual mindless thug of a hooligan, Hiccup wasn't a wimp either. Being frightened is not the same as being a coward. Maybe he was as brave as anyone else there, because he went to catch a dragon despite knowing what dragons are like. And when he climbed perilously to the mouth of the cave and had found that inside there was a long, twisty tunnel, he still went down it, despite not being taken on long, twisty tunnels with dragons at the end of them. The tunnel was dripping and clammy. At times it was high enough for the boys to walk upright. Then it would close down into a narrow, claustrophobic holes that the boys could only just squeeze through, squirming onto their stomachs with flares held in their mouths. After 10 long minutes of walking and crawling into the heart of the cliff, the stench of dragon, a salty stink of seaweed, and old mackerel heads got stronger and stronger, until finally it became unbearable and the tunnel opened out into a ginormous cavern. The cavern was full of more dragons than Hiccup could ever have imagined existed. They were every possible colour and size, and they included all the species that Hiccup had heard of, and quite a few more that he hadn't. Hiccup started sweating as he looked around at him after the pile of animals, draped over every available surface, even hanging upside down from the roof like giant bats. They were all fast asleep, and most of them were snoring in unison. This was a sound so loud and so deep that it seemed to penetrate right into Hiccup's body and vibrate around his soft insides, churning his stomach and bowels and forcing his heart to beat at the same slow dragon pulse. If one, just one, of these countless creatures were to wake up, it would raise the alarm to others, and the boys would meet a horrible death. Hiccup had once seen a deer that had wandered too close to the wild dragon cliff, torn into pieces in a matter of minutes. Hiccup looked at his eyes. "I will not think about it," he said to himself. "I will not." None of the other boys were thinking about it. Ignorance is very useful in such circumstances. Their eyes were popping with excitement as they walked through the cave, hands over their noses to keep out the revolting smell, looking for the biggest dragon they could find that would fit in their basket. They left the torches in a pile at the entrance. The cavern was already well lit by glowworms, huge, sluggish animals dotted here and there that shone with a steady yet dim fluorescence, like a low-watt light bulb. And the flame shuffers gave off extra bursts of light that flickered on and off as they breathed in and out. Predictably, most of the boys headed towards the plug uglies of the dragon world. Snoutlout made a big fuss about